Hey everybody, welcome back to some more Book of Lying. So, I recently managed to get a thing working in Spring Realms that I figure you all probably would like to see, and in addition, it follows on pretty nicely from our last tutorial on how to use the tags inside of target selectors. So, over here I have some rather unassuming objects, and this just does a particle effect, this does a couple of things, and this is one thing. Straightforward so far. Okay, if I hit that, we can see I now have a wisp spawner. It is, of course, just an armor stand with a piece of glass on its head, and the flame effect is coming from this block here, which is just a fairly straightforward executing based on there being a mob spawner tag. So, straightforward, nothing complicated here, and then this one just kills all of those mob spawners. So, again, using tags, straightforward. But we can make this actually function as a mob spawner. In fact, we can make this work pretty much almost identically to an actual vanilla mob spawner. And I'll explain a little bit why that is incredibly potent and important. But first, let's get a little bit more complicated, shall we? Here's what we're going to need to do it. Now, it's important to note that in the course of this, I am only using tags and then one singular actual objective. So, scoreboard objectives list. There we go. We only have timer. That is it. It is simply a dummy value. It goes from 1 to 0 to negative 100 or whatever number I want to put into it, it just does that. And that's the only thing that we need for this to function. So, up here, we begin by breaking these things down. So the way that the mob spawns in vanilla work is sort of in a 3-step kind of period. So the first thing is, they only work when players are nearby. After that, they only work if there's not already too many of the particular entity in range of the same spawner. And then once it's done, it takes a while to do it again, but it does some spawning. Straightforward. Now, to imitate that inside of command blocks, we sort of have to break things down so that we can select a smaller and smaller group of mob spawners to try and figure out exactly which ones should be spawning. So in this case, we first, from all players who are just not in spectator mode, because, why not, this actually can affect people who are in creative mode, but that's not usually a concern. So from there, we execute that, and we tell any mob spawner within 16 blocks. I think that's actually, like, fairly significantly larger than your average mob spawner, but nonetheless, we just add the tag armed. So straightforward, that just tells us this group of entities are armed because there is a player nearby. Straightforward. Then, we decrement from their timers. So we're using, again, the tag armed, so we can select that subsection of mob spawners that are within range of a player, so they count down to when they should be actually able to spawn again. Score timer min 1 here, just make sure that it stops at 0. That's nothing really massively complicated there. Then, now that we've done that, we need to select all of the armed mob spawners whose timers are at 0. So no higher than 0 here, score timer equals 0. And for that, we just add can spawn, which indicates another subgroup of our spawners, which is the ones that are able, if they pass all the other checks, to spawn a mob. And then we add just a little indicator piece here to make sure that it actually looks pretty, and we remove the armed tag because it's now surplus to requirement. And that is our first stop here, so fairly straightforward. Nothing too terribly complex there. We're just sort of building our Venn diagram and we're finding the overlaps, working down. Okay? Next. So, the next part is where we go through the limiting, the number of, if there's too many skeletons around this particular dungeon, then nothing more is going to come out of it. This is usually circumvented by the fact that skeletons wander away, but we don't need to worry about that too much. So, here, we set every can spawn collective of mob spawners to have a timer value of 8. Now, timer we've previously been using purely as their marker for when they should be spawning again. So this is where we start to reuse that value. And then, from all of the relevant entities nearby, we have them decrement 1 from any of those subsection mob spawners. And that then means that any spawners that still have at least a score of 1 in timer do not have too many mobs around them to be incapable of spawning. Nice little trick there, and that allows us to add the tag of should spawn, which, again, brings us down to our final selection. And then another little indicator, and we set their timer value. Now, I have actually written that down here, because it's technically part of the reset, but basically what we're doing this here, because it means that a given spawner will continue to tick over even if it can't actually spawn. It won't spawn anything, but it will keep ticking over. It's a little bit different if you're looking at an actual vanilla mob spawner, but it's fine. And then, of course, more cleanup, get rid of the can spawn tag that is now, again, surplus to requirement. And that brings us to our last and incredibly simple line, where we have the first part that just does a little bit of smoke and a little bit of fire, because that's what mob spawners always do. And then we summon, and we add, well, getting rid of the cleanup. So, straightforward. Let's turn this on and see how it works, and I'll tell you why it is important. So, there we see it is bubbling away. If I come over here, it stops. If I go closer, it starts up again. And we've got our first little chickie. Hello. Got a little demon chicken here. Yeah, right. So, why is this a meaningful achievement? Why is it that I have spent the past basically 3 Spring Realms dungeons trying to make what is basically just a mob spawner, especially considering that it is entirely possible for you to use the /set block command to put down custom spawners? Well, firstly, there is the fact that this can be indestructible. Case in point, if I wail on this, I can't actually destroy it. I can move around the block as long as I haven't disabled gravity on it, but I can't actually destroy it in the least. And that is because it's an armor stand, it's a marker, so I can't actually physically target it, and it's also invulnerable, so I can't actually do anything whatsoever to harm it. So I have a mob spawner that cannot be destroyed. I also have a mob spawner that cannot be shut off by light. And that is a critical advantage if you're trying to make an environment like a dungeon where mobs are coming out and they're all getting spawned in instead of light levels and whatnot. Oh, and I should probably stress, one of these is spawned and then it has to set the value to value of timer. You have to remember to set that value because none of this works if it doesn't have a pre-existing score in an objective. That's something to bear in mind. But after that, once I've got my mob spawner, I can change all of these values. So the range for players to activate the spawner, I can change that. I can set that to say 4. And then the timer, how long it takes before like something spawns, I can change that too. Change that to 10 seconds, done. I can change the spawn cap right here. I can change that down to say 2. And I can change every single detail of the mob. So for example, I called it the demon chicken. I've got custom named demon chicken. I can show the name by default. I have the loot table change, which allows me to set whatever drops I like from this particular spawner. And I can do that entirely without ever touching the mob spawner. The mob spawner itself is just an armor stand. It's just a collection of armor stands. I can have as many or as few as I like. They can be wherever they want, and I can alter them, every single one of them, with just altering variables over here. That is why this is really, really freaking cool. And I hope you've enjoyed that. So if I get close here, we can see another demon chicken spawn. And we can start to see them spawning a little bit more frequently, perhaps, as well. So there's one. We are still taking away. We'll see them spawning quite a bit faster now. Around about 10 seconds per. And yep, there we go. And I can customize the particles, I can get rid of most of the particles. I've even labeled which ones are just indicators here, so I could easily rip those out, make it a completely invisible spawner. But yeah, that is a really handy thing to be able to do. I'm not sure what we'll cover next time. Maybe you guys can give me some ideas in the comments. What is it exactly that you'd like to see me manufacture? So, with that, hope you've enjoyed, and I shall catch you all next time.